Share. Without my second screen, it's hard to share in presentation mode, so we're just going to go with this mode. Actually, give me 1 second. I can get the cord for that. You think you have it all together? All right. So I'm going to start with a brief intro. Most of you know who I am. My name is Regina Edwards. I am a family law attorney in Georgia, and I really like tech stuff, probably at a level that's higher than my ability and pay grade, but I still really enjoy kind of the process and figuring things out. So this is my special guest. This is Kyle Guy. He actually knows things about tech. So we're going to kind of be going through what Claude is, how to build things on Claude, and essentially how to make your life a million times easier. So this is the URL for let me see if I can move this out of the way. This is the URL for the folder that contains a lot of the materials. So it's tinyurl/LOTB Claude. So if y'all can kind of just put in the chat your level of familiarity with Claude. If your first question is, what is Claude? Put a 1. If it's, I kind of know what Claude is, I'm asking it for basic sort of tasks, do a 2. And if you're doing sort of high level building apps on Claude already, if you can put a 3. So I'm just trying to gauge what people's familiarity is with Claude before I get into it. So let's see what we got. Okay, we have a lot of 3s. Of course, Marcel is a 3. Some 2s, some 1s. So I'll try to start with the basics. So actually, I'll have Kyle pipe in at this point. Just kind of, can you give a brief overview of what Claude is?
Hey everyone. Claude is pretty much like if you use Chat GPT, Claude is just a competitor. Uh, Used to help automate whatever it is you're trying to do. It can be used to automate your day-to-day, manage your emails, help you with scheduling. It's to the point now where if you can think it, you can build it. So
The basic thing we kind of want to get across is almost everything that you can think about that can be built can be done with Claude. So, and it's kind of really hard to imagine if you haven't been working with it, the kinds of things that it's possible. But we'll go through some sort of different levels. So let's see here. This is us. This is me. Obviously, I'm an attorney and I want to be tech nerd, and he is an actual tech nerd. Uh, and so I kind of I do know the practice areas of some of you. So I kind of wanted to touch on different practice areas: family law, personal injury, immigration, business, and estate planning. So I'll start with kind of the tiers of automation. So I've kind of categorized it in 3 tiers: tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1, literally anyone can do. If you know how to use a keyboard and the internet, you're good. You're here, you're on Zoom, so you have figured that out. I promise you, you are ready for level 1. So some of you are already doing these things, and you've been doing them in Chat GBT. So a lot of people have converted from ChatGPT to Claude. Claude also has different tiers. They have a chat tier, they have a co-work tier, and they have a code tier. So chat essentially works just like ChatGPT does, which is you just talk to it, ask it for what you want, and sometimes it does what you want it to do. My favorite thing when I first used it was really to kind of format things, to reformat emails, that kind of basic thing. I also asked it to analyze bank statements. Honestly, it's not as great as Claude for that, and we'll get into that. So tier 1, you don't really need any special integration. You just go. So, and you can start using Claude today. You don't need a demo, even though I'm doing a demo. You can essentially just ask it what to do. You can say, I need you to help me train you, and this is what I want. So I gave I basically exported all my stuff from ChatGPT, so Claude would sort of quote unquote know me. And so they know that I'm a family law attorney. They know how I like my documents formatted and all of that. So those are things that Claude sort of already knows. And I believe what Claude calls that are skills. So they have different skills files that Claude reads to kind of help implement whatever it is you're trying to do. But on tier one, so easy. So just log into Claude, copy, paste, and prompt. And you can say, here's an example of a document. Here are some facts, draft a different document for this different case. So one thing about Claude is when you're using the desktop version, it lives on a particular computer. So that is the benefit of using or creating your own AI tools because it's in-house. You're not sharing the data with anyone else. Because when you start sharing data, you obviously run into confidentiality problems, and you're going to have an agreement with that middleman essentially if you want any sort of HIPAA compliance. So that's why these companies are charging you a whole bunch of money because they are responsible for your information. If you are responsible for your own information, then you're not going to charge yourself any money and you'll save yourself a ton of money. So on tier one, just ask it for something simple. So I had never logged into Claude until about a week and a half ago. That was my very first experience with Claude. So I started with, I'd like to create an intake form that connects with Airtable because I use Airtable as my practice management system. And I want a comprehensive time entry module that automatically syncs with it. And it took a little while for it to figure it out, but I think I had it up and running in an hour. So I would consider that kind of a tier one code automation. So tier two is going to be a little more advanced. There is going to be some basic setup required. You can connect Claude to almost anything. So I did go through and see which systems do allow you connect, and it's almost all of them, almost all of the major practice management systems, which I'm surprised. I'm surprised Clio is letting Claude do anything because I'm going to tell you in this webinar how you can start picking stuff off of off of Clio, so you can stop paying them. Because my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the chat is it's not like Practice Panther where, or my case, which I don't love, but I don't think they charge you for different phases of their programs. They're like, if you want my case, you get all of the things. I think Clio has like Clio Manage, Clio Draft, Clio Grow. There may be other things. I don't know. I don't care. I will never use it. But the point is, you have to pay for each sort of new thing that they add on. And if you're a solo, you may not care because you're not spending a lot of money. But once you start having two, three attorneys and two, three paralegals, those costs escalate very, very quickly. But you can connect Claude today to your practice management system. You just ask it how to do it. That's the best part of it. I can't tell you right now exactly how to log on to my case because I don't have my case. But you can ask Claude, and Claude knows, and it'll tell you step by step of how to connect it to your system. So you can start with something very basic like I want you to run a report and see how many of our case files that we haven't touched in the last 20 days and organize them in level of priority using these particular guidelines. And you can make that prompt a skill and name it. I've like one of my skill names is Trixie. And so when I want to deploy Trixie, I'll just say run Trixie on this file and it'll do it. So that I would consider tier two. And then tier three is definitely super advanced where you full automation workflows and you're using API and all of that. For the most part, you probably would need someone to kind of assist you with that. I consider myself sort of in the middle of technology. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm certainly not capable of full on coding a practice management system, but it is 100% possible with Claude. So these are some things that you
Hey,
can do
sorry,
in tier one.
can you hear
And
me?
at the end of this, I'll give you a link which will contain this presentation and some other sort of output things for you to look at. So first draft document generation, a lot of you are doing this with regular AI. So this part, honestly, itself is not groundbreaking or it shouldn't be. So it can do retainer agreements, demand letters, C&D letters. I anticipate that with personal injury and criminal, because those are either contingency or flat fee and people are trying to maximize the amount of recovery versus the amount of time that they spend on working, they are really going to be locked into this AI. And we'll talk about a particular program that is specifically geared to particularly geared to personal injury, where you can decide if it's worth the $50,000 a year price tag or if you want to spend the time kind of building it yourself. One second, I'm going to check to make sure that there aren't people in the waiting
Yeah.
room.
Thank you, Regina. There's a few people in the waiting room. This is Kristen.
I believe everyone's in. Oh, let's see. Goodness. Give me one second. It's not letting me admit everybody all together. I have to admit them individually. So it's going to take a second. I don't know why that's the case. Oh, nope, found it. Sorry. Another 75 people came in. Sorry about that. Okay. So for tier one demand letters, so for PI, writing the demand letter, that's going to be your bread and butter, especially if you're pre-lit. So you can very easily right now with no code, no experience, upload. Obviously, you're going to want to strip data if you're not going to use Claude Cowork and have a confidential environment. Strip the personal data. You can upload examples of your demand letters and then upload the facts for your current case and then ask it to generate a new demand letter. That honestly is fairly simple to do. You can summarize case notes and transcripts. Again, ChatGPT can do this. I don't think it does it as well as Claude, but you can post records and get concise summaries. Social media and newsletter content. I don't do any of those things, so I can't give you, specific details of how that's done, but it can do it. Client FAQ documents. That is actually a gold mine. So you can give it all of the information that you have in terms of your client education documents and then ask it to format it and make it look pretty and all of that. And then you can deploy it in any way that you choose. Claude also links to pretty much any service that you have. So I link it to Canva. So I already have a Canva client guide and you can tell Claude to edit things in Canva directly, and it does. Legal research memos. I will tell you, I do not like to use AI for legal research. I mean, I don't have to tell y'all the many horror stories about what has happened when people have tried to do it. So I don't really do it, but you can. You just have to train it, and you have to be very, very clear about no hallucinations. Don't try to find answers that you think that I want. I need you to be unbiased. You're going to have to train it a lot to make sure it doesn't hallucinate cases. So if you're using AI for legal research, fantastic, but you're going to have to treat it as if a first year associate has written it, and you're going to have to double check everything. Email templates and client communications, those are very, very easy to format with Claude, and you can deploy them with a plugin, and that probably is going to be in the tier two level. So summarizing records, I think a lot of people have discovered that AI is absolutely fantastic for that. And you can give it certain prompts. So if you do personal injury, an example prompt would be summarize the key diagnosis, treatment dates, and gaps in care from this 40-page medical records package and flag any pre-existing conditions. So from what I have found, it is extremely accurate. Your documents, for the most part, no need to be OCR'd. That's optimal character recognition. So otherwise, if you have a PDF where it's looking at it as an image, it may not be able to pull the text. But you can convert any PDF to OCR very easily using Adobe or any sort of tool. So just sort of keep that in mind. But Claude will let you know. So if you upload a PDF and it says I can't read it because it's an image, then you just need to convert it to OCR before you do it. So these are other examples of kind of tier one things that you can do. Um, I use it a lot in family law. So this would be a good example here. I need to explain to my client why hearing was continued. Here's the email that I got from the court. And it'll have a very nice paragraph of a sensitive email to send to the client explaining the next steps and all, just things that would just take me about 15 to 20 minutes to craft. If I had to do it from scratch, it'll do it in 10 seconds. And I'm honestly not the most empathetic, soft person. So it definitely helps me with that, with delivering news in a more empathetic way that I just don't naturally think of myself. So tier two, this is kind of where we get into more of the higher technological savvy things. So you can export all of your matter data if you want to from all of these services, Clio, MyCase, FileVine, and Smokeball. And again, I'm suggesting that you use Claude Pro. So Claude Pro is something that lives on your computer. So again, you are in control of the data. It's not going anywhere. So when you start using a middleman, like people use here's the thing. Lawyers are always asking me about HIPAA compliance and confidentiality, et cetera. Y'all are using Zapier with a vengeance. So it's the same thing. If you're using Zapier, they're reading your data. So you either have a tolerance for it or you don't. If you are using those tools, it needs to be in your fee agreement. So almost every single state that I've looked at in terms of if they've put a published opinion on it, all of that is fine as long as your client is aware. So you just put it in your fee agreement. We are going to be using AI tools. These are the kinds of tools. Don't put specific tools because if you change, you're going to change your agreement every 5 seconds. These are some of the kinds of tools that we are using. This is how we are using your information. This is why we are using these tools to help process your information. And they agree to it. So that's really kind of a non-issue. But if you are really concerned about putting all of your documents out there in the galaxy, that is why Claude can be a better option. So it can do case summaries for your practice management system. I've seen that done a few times. I think with Clio in my case, it does a really, really good job with that. It can help in automate your client intake. So the client intake from the various practice management systems is kind of varied. I really don't think any of the practice management systems, they don't really do intake that well. So I don't use any of them. I use Lawmatic specifically for intake, but you can use Claude to sort of augment it in ways that you really couldn't even dream of. So any pain point that you have, you can just talk to Claude and say, my case intake does this. What I'm finding it lacking in is this. How can I use Claude to fill this hole? And it essentially will tell you exactly what to do. You can use it for a financial document review. I'll show you an example of a review that I did, and it's actually going to be in the materials. So I'm going to pull that up now and share the screen. So this is my prompt. So this is the skill that I give to Claude of what I want it to do when I want it to analyze, particularly bank statements. So I want it, and this is a huge deal right here. I want it to look for income signals, large transactions, recurring expenses, unusual activity, potential red flags that are specific to family law. So this, as you can see, this is not a very long, lengthy skill document, but then I'll show you the output that comes as a result of that. So this is a report I received. Let's see. Yeah, this is a 3-page report, and I'll show you the second report I got. This is a trial that I did recently. My client didn't really have any money, so that's why her report's only 3 pages long. But it starts with an overview, talks about income and deposits, expenditures and withdrawals. It automatically did a monthly activity summary, and then notable transactions as well. And then it has key observations. Um, and then the aggregate totals. So this was probably about 25 pages of bank statements, and this report was done in 30 seconds. And then I'll show you the report I got from the other side, which helped tremendously with cross-examination. Let's see here. Second, let me let a few more people in.
And while she's doing that, I'm looking at the questions you guys are posting. I'm putting them out in a separate document so we can answer those at the end.
Okay, once I get two more people coming in. All right. So this is, nope, that is the shorter file. Second. So I had about 100 pages of bank statements from the other side in my case. Make sure this is the right one. Nope. Okay, found it. Okay, so this is you can see, very lengthy report that I got from 100 pages of bank statements. So it analyzed Chase bank statements. It was checking and savings, and so it gives an executive summary, and then it does income and deposits. So just a little background on this case. It was a final divorce trial that I did 2 days ago. He was paying alimony. He was not a fan of paying alimony and wanted to stop. He said that he was starving. He literally said the word starving on the stand. And this definitely helped me disprove that. So we pulled out all of the expenditures that he was spending. You can see there's hotel stays and purchases. You can speculate as to why that would be the case. Um, and then there's another separate report that's not on here, but I asked it to pull out eating out and restaurants, and he ate out at least 3 times a day, every single day. And it pulled all of that out. So that was a separate 4-page report of every single time that he ate out. So it definitely helped disprove the notion that he was starving. And spoiler alert, my client got alimony. So um, this also went through his recurring expenses and added all of that up, which was very helpful in making sure that his financial affidavit was accurate. It went through all of the Zelle transactions, and this showed that there were, and obviously all their names are stripped, but all of the different income sources that he was receiving, because he was claiming he did not have any other income sources, and that was easily disproved. This was how much he paid his lawyer. These that were his alimony payments to his wife, so that was fine. But these are just things that it flagged as a red flag. So so it also gave questions in terms of, hey, these are some things that you may want to follow up on. And one thing I do want to say is I always have my paralegal go through the reports and look at the statements and verify that it's not hallucinating information or anything like that. And for the most part, it's just not been an issue. It's showing accurate information. So that's my favorite thing to do, and I would consider that kind of tier two. But you can give it the skill that you need. So whatever your practice area is, you know what it is that you're looking for in the documents. If you are defending personal injury, I mean, you're looking for pre-existing conditions. Well, if you're pursuing it as well, you need to know if your client has a pre-existing condition, but you know exactly what it is you're looking for, and you can train Claude to look specifically for that, which is what the third party programs are doing. They're just charging a boatload of money to do it. So it can help with time entry as well. So you can basically train it to know what your shorthand is. So example is, hey, I had a call with the client regarding custody. It will turn that into a billing ready format and automatically put it into your time entry system. I don't bill hourly, so I don't do that, but I know a lot of people do. So this is something that you can easily connect with Clio, My Case, etc. Have it create a module that directly connects with Clio. And then as you're keeping time, you can just use shorthand, put the case name in, and it'll automatically send it to your practice management system and then expand it to look, nice and fancy. So this is what I would consider tier three. And this is more to kind of give you an idea of what is possible. We obviously can't get into the nitty gritty of how to do it. But for example, you can build, if you wanted to, a fully automated intake pipeline. So essentially any CRM that you're using, you can replicate if you want to. I personally am not incentivized to do it because I would just rather pay $250 a month than to build it from scratch. but there are other things that I do not want to pay monthly for that I'm just going to build. So you can build your own pipeline. You get a web form that goes into your practice management system, and then it goes to Claude API, which will automatically send a welcome packet, calendar invite, all of those things. Discovery organization, Claude can organize online files. It can issue spot as soon, you can have it set up for as soon as documents hit a particular folder, it automatically scans it and lets you know if there's something in there that you should pay attention to. And you can let it know in advance what those sorts of things are that you're looking for in family law. It's usually going to be money related in terms of excessive withdrawals from retirement, et cetera. So I can just train it in terms of what I'm looking for, and it can automatically run it. You can also pretty much deploy a sweeper agent where, well, which I find it easier to run overnight. So, because you're not actively adding things to it in the middle of the night, so it's easier to crawl data. So you can deploy the agent to sort of crawl all of your cases in the middle of the night and flag important things that happened, important documents that came in, give you a full report, and or notify you in literally any which way that you choose. So that's just something that's possible. So So this is an example of how to do a new client intake pipeline. Again, I have zero plans of actually doing this myself, but just to let you know that you can. I would recommend taking the Zapier out of it. I use make.com a lot. Make.com is also a program that sort of stitches different programs together. So one of the first tools that we built was a tool that crawls my email for all of the emails that we get from the court. And I'm not sure if you're not in Georgia, I'm not sure how you get your electronic files, but how it works for us is we don't get the actual files, we get links. So it finds the email, it clicks on the link, it downloads the file, it renames it according to my naming convention, and it sends it to the folder that I ask it to do. And that's all with me doing absolutely nothing. So there's no panicking about missing any of the 25 emails from the court I get per day. I know the document automatically shows up in the file that I want it to with the name that I want it when I want it to. So I'm using make.com for that. So that's actually a fairly pretty easy thing to implement, which you probably, could kind of do on your own. So how do you start? So you can pick a couple of ideas and just kind of start with the easier ones, and then you literally can ask Claude to train you. You can say, this is kind of what I want to focus on first. These are the tools that I'm using. This is my knowledge level, and help me help me help you in terms of creating a system. Now, if you don't want to do any of this stuff and you don't enjoy it, I personally like it. If you don't, obviously you can just pay someone else to do it for you, but it's certainly going to be cheaper than paying monthly systems. So one thing I did kind of want to mention at this point is that a lot of you're going to see a ton of new AI programs on the market. Like you're going to see a lot. And all they are is AI in a nice shiny wrapper. And if you're okay with that, great. You just know that you're going to pay a lot of money for AI in a shiny wrapper. And that's what they're banking on, is that attorneys really don't have the time to figure this stuff out. And they would rather just throw money at the problem. And that's why I think Eve, for example, just raised $1 billion. Other valuations $1 billion. They just had a new round of funding because that's 100% what they're counting on, is that people would rather just pay money for someone else to do the AI. The issue that I have with that is, other than money, is that you're not training it and you don't really know who is training it. So someone that is doing your area of law in a way that you don't want to do it can be training the AI system, versus if you have your own, you are training it, you are telling it to do it exactly the way that you want it to do. And I just think that's kind of a better way to go. So I went through most of the major practice management systems. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is just to kind of give you ideas, no matter what you are using, in terms of how you can use Claude to integrate with what you are already doing. I would definitely wouldn't suggest, if you are all in on Clio, for example, just abandoning it right now to create your own system. But what you can do is start picking parts off of it. And one thing that I do want to talk about is, for example, a document drafter. Clio charges separately for a document drafter, which used to be Lawyaw. Lawyaw was fantastic. It was $100 a month. Then Clio bought it out, got its hands on it, charges a whole bunch of money, and I don't think it's worth it. And they charge per user. So depending on how many people in your firm, you're paying a boatload of money for something that out of the box AI can do for you. And that includes all you got to do is get your templates. You already have your templates. You get your templates together. You tell it how you want it formatted, and you can essentially create your own document drafter. So that's something that I'm doing for myself. That's something that I'm working with Kyle on to kind of create a product for other people as well. And we're kind of keeping it simple in terms of documents for litigation. Just simple documents like settlement agreement, a complaint, the summons, those sort of core documents. So anything that's sort of more advanced in terms of estate planning, business, you probably could build something. I have no plans to foray into that area because it's extremely complicated. And there are tools, honestly, already in place to sort of do that, and they do it very, very well. So, for example, Volter, who I think is on the call, he owns and created Decision Vault, and he created it because his wife is an estate planner, and it was a big pain point for her to get all of the intake information in a way and process it and have it go to the practice management system and then have it create the documents that she needed. So he created a whole software just for her, which I think is an amazing love story, but also a really good product. So if you want something that's more complicated and involves all of the different things that go into estate planning and trust planning, wealth counsel, decision vault, those tools sort of already exist. And it would be extremely, extremely difficult for anyone with any sort of lower technology to try to replicate that in a short amount of time. So I wouldn't recommend it, but you could if you wanted to. So I'm focused on just sort of generic litigation documents. So specifically, I'm going to talk about Clio Draft because, again, it used to be Law Y'all. Now it's Clio Draft. Charging a boatload of money. If you have 10 attorneys, you're paying $60,000 a year for something you literally could build for yourself using the other part of Clio, which I don't know the name of and I don't care. But there's another part of Clio that just runs your practice, has nothing to do with drafting. And you can take your data and create your own document drafter, and it'll cost you a whole lot less money than what this is doing. Another program that I kind of wanted to talk about with is, I don't want to get sued by him. So it's Adam and Blank Legal. So I asked Claude to tell me, well, what are they doing where they're charging a lot of money? Because I believe I think it's a minimum 10,000 a year and then maybe 350 per case. It is extremely pricey. But I can go through all of the features and kind of tell you how you can sort of pick that off and do it yourself if you want to. If you don't want to pay, $50,000 a year, it's up to you. So the first part they're doing, we've already talked about. Any out of the box AI tool can do this for you now anyway. Document summarization, demand letter drafting, deposition analysis, discovery drafting. That is not hard. I promise you, you could have that up and running in half an hour. It is extremely easy to do. So that part, they shouldn't really be charging a whole lot of money for. So case intake and evaluation, obviously it's a little more difficult, but if you have a practice management system, you're sort of doing that anyway. Responding to discovery, legal research, and matter collaboration. Those are, again, things that you can build yourself fairly easily. So the next level is definitely a little more difficult. And honestly, I'd argue those are some things you may not need, which is an AI auditor, an AI analyst, and an AI voice intake agent. I don't know that you necessarily need those things. Again, if you want to pay for it, great. I personally wouldn't recommend it. So again, these are the easy things that you could do that other company is doing. These are the medium things that I feel like you also could do with zero IT help as well. So it's just kind of to give you an idea of what is possible. And the reason why they can charge a lot of money, some of it is fair. They are HIPAA compliant, from what I can tell. So they have a contract with you to keep your data safe and they have to retain it and all of these things. That is extremely expensive for them to do. And they are also processing a lot of data. So any system that they are using is charging them to process your data. And they have to overcharge you for it because they don't know how much data you're going to process on a daily, monthly, or yearly basis. So they are really trying to increase those margins and it's going to cost you a whole lot of money. if you're processing the data through them, and it's going to be an upcharge. Versus if you're building it yourself, you're still going to have to pay directly to the service provider for the data, but it's going to be at cost. So it's going to be significantly less. So there's the bottom line of what you can pick off from that particular service. I do want to talk about HIPAA compliance. People get really in the weeds about HIPAA compliance, and it is extremely expensive to maintain as a third party service. So we're going to talk later about a tool that we've kind of devised together and why it doesn't require HIPAA compliance and how it doesn't require you sacrificing confidentiality in order to use AI to process your information. So HIPAA compliance is extremely expensive because of the risk that they are taking, and they're essentially promising to keep your data safe and to retain it in a particular manner. So they're taking on risk. They're going to charge you a boatload of money for it. So when do you need HIPAA? So if you're using any sort of third party service, you're paying a lot of money and it's sort of built into that already. If you're using Claude and CoWork on your computer, you don't need it because you are the one controlling the data. You're the one that's in charge of protecting the information. So you're not going to charge yourself any money. So you don't need it. So you will need it if you're using a standalone app and you're having any data flow through anybody else's servers. You're going to need it. Your costs are going to skyrocket at that point. So these are just kind of examples of how much a service is going to be charged for keeping your data safe. And that is why it's costing you more money because they have to cover these costs. So if you do it yourself, you don't have those costs. And then again, this is compliance program cost as well. Again, this is something that those larger companies are absorbing. So they're spending literally millions of dollars on keeping everybody's information safe. And you're just kind of a part of that. And these are just more examples of why that costs a lot of money. Does anybody have any questions so far? I have not been looking at the chat.
Yeah, there's plenty of questions.
Oh, great.
One thing I was going to add for the folks that put like three, like I see Josh was talking about Claude Code. One of the things that helped me a lot was there's this plugin called Compound Engineering where you essentially like brainstorm. So you basically have a conversation with Claude. You kind of tell him what you're thinking. And once Claude has an understanding, it'll give you a nice document kind of outlining everything. Hold on one second. Yeah, so what I typically do when I'm building things is I stay with brainstorm until I feel that, Claude kind of understands where I want to go. And then you go to plan, and then plan is where somebody was asking about building um, their own client portal. So if you were using Cloud Code, you brainstorm, hey, I want to build my own portal. And it'll ask you a series of questions. What all does your portal need to do? And then once you have an understanding with that, then that's when you can go into plan mode. And plan mode is, well, here are the things I want to build. Here are the API keys you need, and X, Y, and Z. And then if everything's a go, then it'll start building it. It may require, if you just want to run it on your machine, you typically should be good. But if you have to run it in the cloud, then you got to get API keys and stuff like that.
So,
It's
Kristen,
far.
thanks for chiming in about the privacy and ethical issues. There's a lot. And again, we could spend hours and hours talking about that. But just generally know if you're running Claude and it's on your machine, you are in charge of protecting your client's data. So that eliminates these third-party companies. In addition, you can have your clients consent to using AI tools in their fee agreement, and that removes exposure for that. That doesn't mean you should be careless with it. It's just they're on notice of what you're using it for. And we'll get into how we kind of created a tool that sort of kind of avoids client confidentiality at all, but also helps process information in your case. Well,
And
let's
then hold on one second, Regina. And also, one thing you guys can do is like for some of these questions, if you have Claude desktop or the web, like just ask them. Like there was one question, what's the difference between Claude Pro and Claude Cowork in terms of privacy? I threw that in the Claude, and apparently I didn't know the answer. But Claude Pro has more privacy than Cowork because Cowork has access to like your file system and that. And hold on, let me find that screen.
So while you're doing that, Susan, no, Gina had a great question about whether or not the robot she's trained in ChatGPT can be transferred over to Claude, or is it like starting over? So when I went into ChatGPT and I went into the firm level, you cannot export it. And I don't know why that's the case. It is beyond moronic. If you're using an individual account, you can export absolutely everything and just throw it into Claude. If you're using it on the firm level, it doesn't let you do that. And it tells you need to cut and paste each project in order to get it into Claude, which infuriates me. But that's the answer to the question. I'm going to go through a few more questions before we show you a different tool that we have. Yeah, so switching over from ChatGPT, I have both. I have a personal account and um I have a firm account. So I just exported all the personal settings, and honestly, I had done some things related to work on there. I had stripped all of the client data before I did it, but there were some things that I was able to put into Claude. But honestly, building the skills in Claude are not really difficult. Another super hack is the other AI tools are very good at training the other AI tools. So you can start in ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I need to develop a skill for Claude." And when I when I started brainstorming this tool that we're about to show you, I started in ChatGPT, and it started with 2 or 3 sentences. And I'll just tell you what it is. It's called a discovery analyzer tool. So it's comparing your RPDs, your notice to produce, with the actual documents that you got from opposing counsel, and it's kicking out a chart showing what you got versus what you didn't get. So that's essentially what I told ChatGPT I wanted to do. And I said, help me formulate and develop a plan so I can code this in Claude. And so that was the sort of the starting point. And then Kyle kind of took over from there and then essentially created this tool that we're going to show you. So let me get to that. Oh, 1 second. There's more people in the waiting room. So let me put them in. Okay. Okay. So can everyone see the screen where it says Discovery Tracker?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So let me start play. So we recorded this yesterday because we were terrified about doing it live and messing up. So I log on with my Google account, and you can log into it with others as well. So we're creating a case. We're just entering a just random name here. So one thing, what it's doing is it is comparing what was requested versus what was received in discovery. So how is it doing that? It's doing it with what is called a file map. So if you don't want to know what a file map is, it looks at the name of your folder and it looks at the names of the documents in the folder. So if you don't have a naming convention yet, you should just get one, period. In general, it's a great idea. But this is how it's analyzing it. So it's not looking at any client data. So don't put your client's name in the name of the file and you're good. And I don't. So all of these documents are contained in a folder with the client's name. But when you run it through the system, you can point it, you can just cut and paste the entire folder to just a bland file, and it has no client information. It doesn't know the name. It knows absolutely nothing about your file. All it is seeing is the request from the other side and the names of the documents that you give it. So I'm going to pause this right here. So it has now uploaded the request for production of documents, and it has parsed out what was requested, and you can see all of the different categories, and you can change the cadence if it got it wrong. So, for example, automobile insurance policies, that's going to be a one-time thing. Tax returns, that's yearly. So you can see that that coded it correctly, but you can change it if it somehow is incorrect. And then you can see here at the bottom, these are the requests from the letter. So when you're uploading it, you can just upload the straight request. You can take off the header if you want to, and that way the system has zero access to any client confidential information. So just to let you know, it is entirely possible to create a tool in Claude where it does it a different way, where it actually looks at the documents, reads your documents, renames the file for you, and then analyzes the discovery. That will be incredibly expensive to build, and you're going to have client confidentiality issues. If you're running it on Claude, there's less issues, but it's going to be cost. So if you're getting a ton of discovery documents and you're using this 10, 12 times a month, it will cost a lot of money in terms of data. So that's why I've decided to do it this way, because it's not really using data, because it's just looking at the file names versus what's actually in the file. So, and before anyone asks, well, when you're doing these naming conventions, I mean, I can give you an example of what mine are, but if you're wondering, well, how do you know that it's correct? Honestly, that's something that you got to do on your end, and you can also automate it. So in a closed environment, if you want to, you can use different programs. I've been using Renamer.ai, which is amazing, which it'll actually rename the file itself according to your name convention. You can do it manually. There's different ways to sort of get your file in shape before the file map is created. So what we're doing here is adjusting the time frame to March of 2026. So it's going to look for documents all the way up to the current date. So once we've done that, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Okay, so yeah, childcare would be something you pay on a monthly basis. So that's why we changed it to monthly. The pay stubs, I know we have to add the option for biweekly and twice a month. That's not currently an option, but we're going to add that because obviously that's a need. Which is what I realized when I clicked on that. I was like, oh, there's no biweekly. So eventually, apparently, I'm going to get around to hitting save and continue, and then it's going to go to the next step. Oh, goodness. Okay. So at this point, this is where we connect the storage, and I use Google Drive. I was using Google Drive before. You can also change the provider, and I believe Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox is also an option, but I'm just logging onto my Google Drive here and then connecting it. Depending on the size of your Google Drive, this can take a little while. It took up to 3 minutes. I cut some of that out of the video, but it does take a little while to connect. And then once it connects, and you see I have 9,000 folders in there, and that's why. So we are going to connect directly to the folder, and this is a data set that I created just for this demo. And then you can see all the names of the documents that are pretty specific. And then you click and it's going to analyze and discover accounts. This process usually takes 1 to 3 minutes. So I cut a little bit part of that out of the video. You can go in here and edit if it coded things wrong. For example, Discover is a credit card and not a bank account. So you can edit that here. And like crypto is not retirement, so we change that as well. And you can also, if something is uncategorized, you can put it into the correct category. You can move the categories around, or you can delete the one-off documents altogether. So you don't need a discovery analyzer to determine if you got responses to interrogatories. It's just one document. So you see here, these are just one-off documents. I'm deleting them from the matrix because this essentially is to help you figure out when you're asking for example, one account and 3 years of statements, how many months of those 3 years of statements you're missing. So you don't really need it for these kind of one-off documents. So I've deleted that altogether. So that's not going to appear in the discovery matrix. So hopefully I am about to click confirm and generate matrix. It doesn't take very long for this part at all. So I'm just going to pause it here. So this is the output. So at least 565 documents were requested. We got 142. So with the data set that I used, that was honestly kind of intentional because I wanted some things to be missing. So example for the retirement, you can see which quarters were received and which ones were not. Why am I scrolling that fast? Let me back up a little bit. Okay, pause. So if something is missing, you can actually mark it as missing, or if you actually did receive something and for some reason it didn't catch it, that hasn't happened yet, but you could mark it as we received it. But from what we can tell, it is highly accurate. As long as your naming convention is accurate. If you title a 2023 tax return as a 22 tax return, it's going to code it as 22. So you do have to make sure that your file names are correct. So essentially, this is just the full final product, and it's about an 18-page report. And it also tells you all of the file names as well, which is, I find, particularly helpful when you're kind of communicating with the other side, saying, hey, I asked for this, and you only gave me this. This not only gives you a chart of what you got, what you didn't get, but it also has the file names. So you can just send it back to them and say, look, this file's in there. If it is, let me know where it is. So um, the other thing that you can do is, and we did a separate video for this, and I'll send the Loom link later, but when you get supplemental responses, you just add those responses to the same folder as you already analyzed. You go back into this Discovery Analyzer tool, and then you just have it rescan. And then it will update, and those new documents will appear as received in this tool. Does anybody have any questions? So I'm trying to go through the chat. I don't know if I'm able to see anything, but if anyone wants to just ask a question, you can just unmute and ask a question as well.
I have a question.
Let me pause this. So I'll also show you, and this is going to be in the link that I give you as well, the what I call the discovery compliance report. This is the outcome of the tool itself. So we played around with putting it in an Excel file, and honestly, it just looked terrible. So that's how we ended up deciding to do it this way. So this is a PDF document that shows. Oh, what's the question? What was the prompt for the financial analysis that you used? Good question, Rachel. And that is also going to be at the link that I give you. So I put the actual prompt in there. So you're going to have it. All right. So this is the outcome of that tool. And so it shows you what was missing, what was received. And yeah, this is about 12 pages long. The link for this presentation, oh, I haven't put it in there yet, but I promise you I'm going to drop it in the chat. So it's going to include this PowerPoint and the prompt for the financial discovery, as well as the outputs that it gave it. So you can also use that to train it because it's anonymized. You can say, hey, this is the kind of report that I'm looking for when I ask you to give me a financial analysis, and that'll help train Claude on your end. Or if there's something that you don't like about it and you want to change and you don't like what I'm looking for and you want to look for different things, then change it before you upload it to Claude. So this is just the final output. I make this a little bigger. Okay, so I'm going to put the link in the chat. And Kyle, can you see if there are any questions that we need to answer, or if anyone wants to just ask a question, you can log in and ask.
Yeah, it's quite a few questions in the chat, and it's not letting me copy. I had to manually type the questions out somewhere else to kind of.
Okay, we'll just pick one at random.
So we
We'll
can
just go
just
for it.
let's see. For the person that asked about you got the mute, Regina. For the person that was asking about Claude Pro and Claude Cowork, I did post what it said in the chat, so maybe I can just read that. Claude Pro is like having a private conversation with an AI assistant through a chat window. What you type stays between you and Anthropic. It's not used to train the AI unless you say so. And there's a record of your usage. Cowork is more like handing the AI assistant the keys to your office. It can open your files, browse the web, and operate apps on your computer. That's powerful, but it comes with trade-offs. So I think you guys can kind of see where you can potentially get into trouble. I personally haven't used Cowork. Most of the work I've been doing is from the terminal and with Claude Code, like building apps.
I've been using Cowork. I don't do code, so I've been using Cowork, and that was very easy. That's when I decided I wanted to create this tool to put information into Airtable, and it created the program in, gosh, well, it took me a little while. It took me maybe about 30 minutes for me to sort of tweak it. And that's using Claude Cowork. And someone mentioned in the chat that if you have Claude Pro, you have Claude Cowork. You just have to use the test desktop version and you have to enable it. And you have to create a folder on your computer. That's where it's going to grab files. That's where it's going to output files. So it's all going to be hosted on your desktop. So that's why the information is secure and private. And that's why I actually really like this because I've always worried about third party apps. You're never going to be able to convince me that Clio, my case, your stuff can't be compromised. I mean, I don't care what their terms of service says. I feel like anybody that works there could read your data at any point. So that's just kind of my feelings on it. It didn't stop me from using those programs, but when people say I'm worried about client confidentiality, it's like, yeah, but you're using all these other systems and anybody that works there has access to your data anyway. And if you're using Zapier, you've broken the link anyway. And a lot of people don't realize about Zapier. It's a wonderful tool, but you're still adding a middleman and your data is going through it. So are there any questions that you pulled out? So Kristen's point is a really good point. Again, I'm huge on naming conventions. I somewhere on the YouTube channel, there's a video of how I name my files, which will probably be useful to you if you do family law and nothing else. But in general, my policy is I should know what's in the file without clicking on it. So there shouldn't be a file that says appraisal. Like that's not helpful. It should say 123 Main Street appraisal, December 31st, 2025, valuation $542,000. So when you have very specific names like that, it's going to help you, especially when you're using tools like this or you're asking Claude to look for certain things. It's a lot easier for Claude to look at a file name than within the file and call out the data. I mean, it can do it. It's just you're going to spend a bunch of money on data. So if you are, using a naming convention properly, not only I think is it just better for your firm and just to kind of help you in general, but it's going to save you a lot of money. Is anyone running? Wait, hold on. Every time someone adds something, it goes, is anyone running an LLM offline? It went away. Hold on. Is anyone running an LLM offline/local version that is not collected to the cloud? Yes, Eve. So that's what I'm talking about. So Claude Cowork lives on my home computer. So the folder is there, the information that it's grabbing from there is there, the output is there. Once it goes into your once it goes into your Claude folder, then of course you can cut and paste it anywhere you want it to. But again, you're responsible for keeping your data safe. So wherever you post it is wherever you post it. So that's why you're saving money on data costs because you're not trusting a third party to keep that confidential. Hospitals get breached all the time. HIPAA compliant can still be hacked. That is a very good point. April is fantastic because she's kind of like Debbie Downer sometimes. But she's absolutely correct. Hospitals definitely get breached. HIPAA compliant can still be hacked. So when people kind of get all in their feelings about HIPAA compliant, I'm like, that's not necessarily going to save the day. Your stuff can still get out there. And that's why this is sort of a good way to control it. So when I was using ChatGPT and I was uploading stuff, I was stripping it first before giving it to ChatGPT so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you're using Claude Cowork and it's on your computer, you should be good. But then again, you are responsible for your own data in that scenario. So your control of your data is it's within your hands. So you just need to have good processes and tools and system with, within your firm, and you don't have to pay for anything else. Let's see if I can find some other questions. I thought co-work was less secure. No, no, it's the opposite. So co-work you can only use on your desktop, right, Kyle? I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yes, it's co-work is less secure in the fact that it has access to your more access to your computer.
Oh, if that's what you mean, yeah, it's definitely gonna see some stuff in your computer for sure. But it's on your computer, but you're not sending it to the cloud, you're not sending it to a third person, but you are giving it access to your computer. So I have a folder in Claude that basically handles all the tasks. There's a skills folder, I believe. And it's all on my computer. So yeah, it's got a lot of access there, but honestly, there's nothing on my computer. So almost everything I have is in the cloud. So I can't imagine there's anything on my computer that would be problematic. So I've posted the link before. If anyone doesn't see the link, let me know and I'll send it again, but it's in the chat. If you are a solo practitioner, do you need the team edition? Annette, I did not get the team edition. I got the solo. And that's because for right now, I'm just going to be housing it on my computer. So the reason that sort of spurred all of this Claude is my beloved office manager of 10 years is leaving me. She is tired of law. She is over it. I don't know how 10 years of family law could have done that to her, but she's done. So she's going to be working for a private investigator and she does everything. So I need AI to replace some of the things. And then I have another employee left that is going to be doing the remainder of the things that she's doing. But that's really kind of what spurred me to kind of, especially the Discovery Analyzer tool, that has saved, gosh, I can't even tell you how many hours. And since we're flat fee, we're definitely trying to maximize or minimize the amount of time and maximize the output. So we're trying to pick off things that you don't need a law degree to do that we can do safely and securely with AI. And obviously, someone's going to be double checking it on the back end, but it just cuts down by hours the amount of manual time that you're putting in there. Could Claude create a bespoke client portal? The answer is yes, 100% yes. So if anyone wants to get really into the weeds, like if you think I'm a tech person, I'm like a 3 out of 10. Like I said, I know enough to be dangerous, but there is a Facebook group called Legal Tech Collective, and it's run by Dan, I pronounced it wrong, Sherbush. He's an estate planning attorney, and he also used to be a developer, like as a job. So he's a 10. 100% he's a 10. So sometimes when he posts things, I'm like, I recognize those words, but not in that order. I need you to explain this to me like a moron. But in general, you can pretty much do anything. So he's built his own practice management firm. Someone else posted in the group today that they have a bankruptcy firm and they created their own practice management system. So it 100% is possible. So the more people you have in your firm, the more you're probably going to want to look at doing this. Because if you're a solo and you're paying $50 a month per service, you may not care that much. But if you're trying to scale and you're trying to add on, it's going to help, especially with PI firms. That's why, the Adam and Blank company jumped on a really good opportunity because they know these PI firms are trying to process cases very quickly, especially if you're doing pre-lit PI. You got to get those demand letters out quickly. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to comb through all those medical records, make sure that you haven't, because you don't want to send a demand letter and then the other side says, F you, we found this pre-existing condition and your client actually broke their back in a skydiving accident a year ago. So um, that seems to be the log jam in personal injury based on the attorneys that I've talked to, and that really helps you get through this log jam. So I'm not going to knock the other service. I'm not going to knock anybody's hustle. If they can make money at it, great. But you just need to know that there are less expensive ways to do it, and that allows you to save money and to train it the way that you want to train it, specifically for your practice area, for your firm, for your risk tolerance, for the insurance adjusters that you know that you have an issue with all of that. Are there any other questions that we missed? Um, sorry, I'm reading the note for Renee. What tool do you use to strip client data? Uh, what was I doing before? I think I just did it manually, honestly, because I was terrified that if I tried to use something else, it would defeat the purpose. So I just manually did it. With Adobe, it's easy. You search and redact, search for a particular word, and it will redact it through the whole thing. I like the Adobe tool because some people will try to use markers, etc. You may, without getting too political, but you may remember this from some of the release of the Epstein files. They apparently don't know how to redact because they were using like the black highlighter, which you can see through. So people were getting information that they shouldn't get about victims, et cetera, because apparently the government does not know how to redact. So don't do that. So with Adobe, their search and redact tool is very, very good and it flattens it. And then don't necessarily need to know what that means other than their tool just kind of bakes in the redaction. You cannot read through it. And that was the issue with the files is that you could read through the redaction. That's not what you want. But now if you're using Claude Cowork, you could strip the data if you wanted to very easily. So those reports that are in the file that I showed you with no client confidential information, they had names and accounts and all through that sucker. So I just said, please take out all names, take out all identifying characteristics, et cetera, and then it does that. People are talking about Quinn. I don't know much about Quinn. I think it's a competitor of Claude, so I can't give you too information about that. But obviously, you can test and see and compare for yourself to see which one is better. But if something works for me and I get it within the first 5 minutes, I tend not to switch. If I conversely, if I test something and I don't get it within the first 5 minutes, I'll get frustrated and I'll start looking for something else. If you use, Josh answered this, but if you use the desktop version, do you need a separate account to use Claude on the web? And the answer is no. You start with Claude on the web, then you download the desktop version. You can't log into Cowork, or I don't believe Code either on the desktop version. You can log onto those. I mean, on the web version, you can log onto those on the desktop version, but it's the same login. And Kristen's point about having a policy for your team as well is very well taken. They need to know what you're doing. If you're deciding to do this, you're letting them know we are now in control of our data. We are responsible for keeping our client information safe. So if you're housing everything on one particular computer and another person is remoting in, there needs to be a policy about what information that they're sharing, outside of that. So all the companies that you're paying or that you would be paying thousands of dollars for, they are training their employees about how to keep your data safe. So you can train your employees for free. So Stacy said, I'm determined to do this. You're using Qualia for real estate closing, like years ahead of all the non-real estate closing PMS. I agree. When I closed on my house, I was blown away. So my closing attorney used Qualia, and I was like, this is fantastic. I don't know why everyone isn't doing this. So that is a really good program, and from what I remember, you could probably easily replicate it. But yeah, Qualia is great. And Claude will tell you. You can say, I use Qualia. This is what I use it for. This is how it works. Help me build something that is exactly like it, and it will do it. Yeah, Josh is correct. You say, hey, go look at Qualia and make my thing like that. Yeah. You don't really have to get fancy with it. Just talk to it like a person. So Josh is correct too. I guess he's a software engineer, so your level of knowledge is way above mine. So when people say, "Hey, can I do this with Claude?" My answer is probably going to be yes. Do I know how to do it? Probably not. If it's not a tier one or two, I'm not going to know how to do it. But I know Kyle, he knows how to do it, and other developers know how to do it. And you could train yourself if you really wanted to. There's lots of YouTube videos about it now. People are really jumping on the Claude bandwagon. So there seems to be two different tracks. There are people that are training you to do it yourself, and there's other people that are selling tools where it's these AI tools and like I said, in a shiny wrapper. And I think the shelf life on those is not going to be as long because people are going to realize I really could be doing this myself. So this kind of code that we developed for this tool, I mean, Kyle's a developer. He could have done it, but it probably would have taken, geez, at least a month, 2 months to just manually code all of it versus using Claude to help with the code. So, is it necessary to use LexisNexis plus Claude for research purposes, or is Claude sufficient? I have not, you may not have been here earlier, Verna, but I don't like to use any sort of AI tool for research. I don't necessarily trust it. Also, I have one area of law. I've been doing it for 25 years. I know it already. So there's not a ton of research that I have to do. I wouldn't use LexisNexis for anything. That's just my kind of personal view. But Google Scholar is free. We get what's it called? Case text, yeah, through our bar for free. So between those two tools, I can use those for research. I have not used LexisNexis and I have not used Westlaw for the last. I don't think I've had a subscription for the last 20 years. So I don't think it's necessary. I know that Lexis and both Westlaw are incorporating AI into their research, but all they're doing is you're paying them to pay their engineers to figure out AI to train their stuff. You can do it too. It's just a matter of time. With all that free time you have as a practicing attorney, you have time to figure this stuff out. And if you don't, I'm telling you, it is cheaper to hire an IT developer to build it for you than to pay someone else that has a whole bunch of people on their payroll and millions of dollars in data to pay for to do it. Megan says she's been using Fast Case's AI tool. Yeah, it's called Fast Case that we get for free with the bar. And then she feeds that output into Claude. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that. At some point, I might get to it. I don't do appellate work, and it is extremely rare in family law where I come up with an issue that I have to research, or it's an issue of first impression. So it's just not a need. So I haven't gone into that. Claude teaches people new languages. That would be amazing. Claude will help you do marketing materials. Yep. Eve says, I hope that more attorneys create conditional logic drafting tools so they can stop spending days drafting agreements. That is hard to do. Honestly, it just really is because there's so many variables. And the problem is, and this is why you should build it yourself in Claude. Because if you're using a program, they are trying to account for different practice areas, different geographical areas, different states, all in one program. And it's going to vary widely. So I do not do trusts in the States. I think I took a course on it, and the course convinced me that I am too old to learn new things. But the laws just vary widely from state to state in terms of, probate taxes and the process, all of those things. So it's really hard to make um, a product that encapsulates all of that. You can do it, but that's why I think if you build it yourself, you're training it. You can input your probate code or your tax and estate code and say, look, these are the laws that we're working with. And these are the only laws that we're going to be working with. Don't look elsewhere. And so you're training it. If you're using someone else's tool, they're training it, and you don't know if they're giving it good training or bad. Has anyone built a billing system with Claude? I haven't, but that is actually not difficult. That's very, very, that would be one of the easier tasks that it can handle. And you can ask Claude how to do it. You can ask ChatGPT. If you're already in ChatGPT, you can say, look, this is what I want to do with Claude. Tell me how to do it. I have Claude Max. Does that work with cowork? I don't know the names of the different levels. It does, Kyle? Okay.
Yeah, pro. If you have pro or higher, you get it.
Renee says, I haven't built a billing system, but I've used Claude to create invoices and custom billing pages in Stripe. It can do that. I'm not hourly, so I don't really worry about billing. I just say, I send an email and say, pay me. That's my billing system at the moment. But you can build a billing system in Claude if you want to. And if you're already using a system and you just don't like the invoices, somebody was complaining about my case. Oh, we're supposed to call it 8M. It was terrible rebranding in the history of rebranding. But some people were complaining about the billing in 8 a.m. And you can sort of hijack that by sending out your own billing in Claude versus my case if you want to. trying to get through all the comments. Do I track my billable hours? Sort of. I have to in my Guardian cases. So when I say don't bill hourly, that does include my Guardian ad litem cases. Bye, Kristen. So I use Airtable. My entire practice management system is on Airtable. I just used Claude to create a time entry tool. I could go to Airtable and enter it myself, but Airtable doesn't have an app, so there's no really easy way to do it from my phone. So I created an app where I can access from anywhere to enter my time directly into Airtable. And then we I don't want to get into a whole Airtable webinar because there's a video posted about that. But it is very easy to do billing and to send out reports using Airtable. So I think we got through most of the questions. If you have any specific questions about Claude, don't ask me, ask Kyle. Can you drop your email in the chat? Just you can ask the Airtable question, Lois. I'll try to answer it. Two more questions, techie questions about Claude and building some of these systems. I'll just tell you what we've done so far. It's the crawling the emails to get the links to download the files from the court. That's one automation we set up, the Discovery Analyzer tool that's still in beta testing, but we plan to deploy that pretty soon. We're doing a document drafter, which again is for kind of standard litigation documents. Here's my entry of appearance, my leave of absence. It's not going to be, here's a complex business agreement for 8 different companies. We're not doing that. So I started building out skills, and how is that different from projects? That is a Kyle question because I do not know. What is the difference between skills and projects in co-work? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done much work with, or really any work with co-work just yet. So,
I think the answer is, and you're going to Google after and see if I'm wrong. So projects uses skills. So you could develop the skill. So for example, the financial analysis of the documents, the prompt, that's a skill. So the project would be, here's this case, apply this skill to this case. So that means now the skill is going to analyze the documents that you've given it, and that's the quote unquote project. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Could be wrong. But in terms of writing skills, you can either do it yourself or you can give it examples of orders that you've done, prior work that you've done, and said, this is what I'm trying to do. I need you to help me develop a skill that does this. And it'll at least get you sort of starting about it. Airtable runs in the cloud. How do you protect client data on it? Well, we don't put any confidential client data on Airtable, though. So I mean, I guess that's the answer to that. So when we have the name of the file, it's not the full name of the client. So, A Smith, I don't think that's really breaching confidentiality. So, um, yeah, I don't find that to be an issue, but it's also in my fee agreement. I say in my fee agreement, I'm using Airtable, I'm using these online tools. There's always going to be a possibility of data breach, so my clients just kind of consent to it. Why do I use Lawmatics and Airtable, Taylor? So Lawmatics is just a CRM. I am very well aware that I probably could build a CRM on Airtable. I tried once. I failed miserably. The juice was not worth the squeeze. I just decided I'd rather pay $272 a month. I get at least 30 to 35 new client calls a day. If I got fewer calls, I probably would try to figure this out. But the volume is so high that I can't, I don't want to try to figure that out. Like my issue is on document drafting and I always tell people my focus is on current clients, not the ones coming in the door. So I'm focused on getting the cases that I have and processing them. And I honestly spend less time and energy on new clients coming in. So I just have not put any energy into that. Okay, great. Narissa answered the question. Project is where your work lives, and Claude remembers how you and your goals over time. And then I guess I was kind of correct. Skills is how you execute certain technical tasks. Yep. So like I said, if you have technical questions, reach out to Kyle. If you have other questions for me, Let me know the Discovery Analyzer tool that you saw. We're probably going to be deploying in the next 60 days or so once we make sure make sure that we get it, perfected. But in the meantime, if you're thinking about using it, make sure your naming conventions are, up to snuff because that's what it's based on. What is the best AI tool for answering service that is not in English? I do not know. As much as I'm into AI, I do not want to use an AI um, for answering service or for reception. Do you share your fee agreement disclosure language? Ebony, I have not, but I will add it to that folder. So if you click on that link in a few minutes after this, it'll be there because I just added it. I added some additional language to my fee agreement this morning, so I'll put that in there. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for everybody showing up. And at some point, we'll edit this and it'll be on the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.
Bye, everyone.